It's the I Hardly Know Her podcast, where we activate the improv power of yes and into our conversations to spark curiosity and expand our perspectives in life. Listen in as we chat with industry leaders who share their stories and skills to help inform and inspire so we can all be better individuals contributing to a better world. And remember, you don't have to be a big deal to do big things. We are back with another episode of the I Hardly Know Her podcast. I have with me my partner at Improv Team Culture, Jeanette Cerami. Welcome back to the show, Jeanette.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you, listeners. Great to be back.
Woohoo! Okay, today we wanted to rapid fire through some challenges that we gathered from real people at a leadership summit that our company hosted in fall of 2023. And we didn't get a chance to go through them all that day. And what we did was position it so that people could share a real challenge or a specific scenario, something that was bothering them at work. So collaboratively, we could look for solutions. And so I grabbed a stack of them. And admittedly, can you hear them? Can you guys hear that on the microphone?
Yeah.
The listeners there? It's a stack of white 3x5 classic note cards. And I have only flipped through a couple of them. So this will be kind of fun and a practice for us in our passion for improv and try to give one possible solution or a perspective. Because I'm not 100% sure what's on these. And I know from the day of our event, some of the cards actually had a nice piece of advice about leadership, which is great too. So without totally belaboring the setup here, I just think it's a really fun thing to make sure that we are continuing to hear what people are saying is a problem and bringing light to where there could be room for some improvement. That's what we all hope for in our workplace, where we spend so much of our freaking life. We want to love it.
And just to add to the magic of it, this part of the show happened right after my speech. And so I wasn't even in the room. I was moved to another room and I was working on some promo materials. So I've never heard any of these.
Ooh, cool. These ones actually may not have even been on stage too, but you didn't even hear the type of it, right?
Yeah.
So it was interesting. I brought up about a dozen people from the audience to read them out loud on behalf of peers that were in the room with us. So we know they were problems affecting the exact people in our airspace. And yeah, when we can stand up and show up for each other, in theory, the magic does happen. Let's see if we can bring a little magic, Jeanette.
Okay.
I almost feel like Johnny Carson, like hold the cards over my forehead. And be like, all right. Okay. I'll have you do the first one and then we'll just alternate. Okay. So someone says, one way of leading will not fit for all individuals or personalities.
That's so true. I mean, people say that we have three very distinct different ways that we learn. Some people learn by watching, some people learn by doing, and some people learn by listening. So you kind of have to encapsulate all of those when you lead and think about all of those elements in one way or another.
Ooh, love it. All right, next. This one I'll take. When an employee is struggling, how long do you keep coaching and helping them? Or is that sometimes holding on too long when it might not be a good fit for either party?
Ooh.
Okay. I had this experience as a branch manager a number of times when I used to work in banking, and it was all about very clear communication and in a very uplifting yet factual way. So we have to bravely have conversations about what's working, what's not working, and ask the employee what they're really feeling about it. Is it in their strengths? Are they feeling like it's something they want to keep working on, or have they given up? Because what I found was that having those open conversations helped me have a more smooth separation, or their departure was a lot less traumatic than it might have been otherwise by an abrupt firing, because we felt like we were working through the solution together. So my top answer on that in the immediate heat of the moment is have the hard conversations with really good intentions that everyone can have a win.
Love it.
Okay. Up next. It appears that the DEI movement in our company is only at the surface. How do we move the needle further?
Ooh, that's the tough one. I've just recently talked about this, and I'm seeing a lot of trends where people are saying the buzzword, but they're not actually doing anything about it.
Mm.
So I think that maybe getting someone from the outside, it's going to cost you a little money, but it'll pay in dividends. Get somebody from the outside to do a bottom to top full scale analysis on what are you doing, what's working, what's not working, and maybe bring in an outside perspective to help you move that needle, because we don't know what we don't know. And so if we're thinking we're doing the right thing, if we're going through the motions, we might need an outside perspective to tell us what's really not working and why we can't move forward.
I want to add a add-on question to that because I love where you're going with that. Why is it the outside perspective? Why can't people figure it out on their own internally?
Because it's really hard to be critical of yourself from the inside.
Mhm.
It's why performers need an outside perspective to direct them. It's why you need to watch a video of yourself auditioning before you send it in, or practice doing your speech before you do it on stage. We can't look at things with a critical eye from the inside all of the time. We can be more self-aware, but that comes from being honest and authentic in and willing to take criticism, I think, from the outside.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. Okay, up next. Ooh, accountability. How to hold the team and team members accountable due to fear of damaging the culture. Interesting. Okay, what I find interesting about this is that they're talking about, whoever wrote this is talking about accountability, and they're immediately trying to hold other people accountable,
Mm.
which from my experience, you can't really hold someone accountable,
Mm.
especially if we're not holding ourselves accountable. It's sort of like a myth. The way that people talk about that,
Yeah.
it's putting a punishment or a consequence around something when we're trying to hold someone else accountable. Instead, my answer to this would be inviting the team into the discussion of what the desired result is or what the expectation is on whatever the project or specific thing is at hand. And when you get their investment, they will be more likely to hold themselves accountable to participating in the best way that they can. I would love to dive into that one on a whole other level someday, because I definitely think accountability is huge, and it starts with leaders taking
Mhm.
accountability and demonstrating it and inviting people in to rise to the challenge of holding themselves accountable instead of it being something that's being dangled or held over them.
I would love to add to
Yeah.
that a piece of that to get investment is being really candid about what the consequences are. Now, consequences have like
Right.
an icky negative tone, but consequence is just the product of whatever you've done, right? You have
Yeah.
an action and a consequence. So I think that putting in plain view, whether it's like on a board, make an infographic, make it fun and interesting so all the different types of learning can, ingest it. But yeah, have the consequences. Why would I need to be held accountable if I don't see into the future what it means if I'm not held accountable?
Yes. Okay. I love that. All right. Back to you, Jeanette. Getting teammates to collaborate better when they have different personalities.
Ooh, I mean, welcome to improv, baby. Yeah, just finding a way to, I guess, lighten the air. What am I trying to say? Lighten the environment to start off with. I think starting off with letting people do a quick check-in, maybe
Mhm.
say, before you even get into what you're doing there, what the project is, kind of have a level set of, this is where I'm coming from, this is the department I'm in, this is where I am in my, personal life, professional life, whatever. Because if we can see where everybody is coming from and all the different perspectives, it is going to make us more quickly empathize with them. Even if you're coming from a different place and you have a totally different personality, if you have a wife and pet at home, I can relate to that because I have a spouse and pet at home. It's going to make it easier for me to see where you're coming from, even though it's not necessarily on that project. We
Right.
don't have to have the same personality to all be human and go through this experience together.
Absolutely. And one tiny add on to that, Jeanette, is I think about whenever I'm noticing something that I don't really love about another person, or I may be getting rubbed the wrong way, or I don't understand, it's usually because I don't know them very well or understand it or whatever. It also is a good reminder for us to think about, if I want to be respected and honored for who I am as an individual and my personality type and the way I think, that reminder of how much I would appreciate that from others, it reminds me to offer that to other people, to slow down and learn more, so that we're sharing that energy of wanting to understand and celebrate the differences and not be afraid of them as blocks in our workspace. All right, cool. Is it back to me on this one?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, okay. This one says, my challenges are more peer to peer. So she's asking, or he or she, they are asking, getting them to see my vision and perspective. This is almost sounds like it's carrying on the last thing we were just talking about. If someone is very focused on how do I get people to see my vision, and in fact, it was originally written how to see the vision, and then it was scribbled out and put my vision. So my immediate reaction to this would be that the vision itself may be cast, and yet in order for the other people to invest in that vision, they need to understand why, or what their role could be, how they can be part of the win together. I would worry by the vibe of this, of anytime we're saying my versus we, that's always a red flag in leadership space. So that might be the first thing to consider. And going back to even accountability is, what is your role as a leader in casting the vision for the organization or the project? What are those results? And then merging some of those things we've already talked about, the consequences of whatever decision we decide to make, and really inviting people to ask questions so they can have clarity and choose to invest in the vision instead of it just being told, this is the vision, like it or lump it. Next.
Love it.
All right. When leadership doesn't stop to ask what's important to their team and responds with what they think is important to their team, how can you overcome? Sounds like we're having some themes here.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds a lot like you need that buy-in, right? So if this person is talking about their leaders, like they are not the leader, they're talking about their leaders in this situation of a project or a vision or whatever. I would say, if you feel comfortable, that's a psychological safety. But if you feel comfortable, maybe do a check-in of, can we all go around and give our input, our feedback of like where we're at, right? Let's all level set. I mean, level setting is so important. It's important on a weekly basis. It's important on a project basis. I think that being willing to level set and see where everybody is at, a barometer check, whatever you want to call it. There's a stoplight analogy that a lot of human resources people use, where at the beginning of a meeting, you say you're red, yellow, or green. Maybe talking about that specific, I almost said specific too, that specific project or idea or thesis or mission. Where are we all feeling on it? If I'm not feeling great about it, you're not going to get my buy-in. I'm going to check out. So yeah, that accountability, but in this case, it's holding your leader accountable.
Yeah. Okay. And because I can't remember what book I read it in. I always have way too many audiobooks going in at any given time and paper books, so it blurs together. And talking about that accountability of how we can hold ourselves accountable, and yet it's hard to hold others accountable. So it's kind of like mirroring back, right? As you were saying, calling that attention to the leader. And you said in a past episode, okay, to recap. Okay, to recap, that could be a gentle way of making an opening for a conversation, I think, for an employee to make sure that they're hearing it right and look for the gaps in the communication maybe as well. Because when people are not, if the leadership is not stopping to ask for those insights, and they're kind of in that rolling forward, they're bowling over other people's ideas or whatever, because they are so set in what they think. I feel like that actually could be a helpful way for people to kindly bring the attention back to it, is some of that verbiage. Okay, to recap, what you're sharing is your idea. And then they're kind of putting the words back in the leader's mouth of what they just heard. I don't know if it 100% works. I'm just envisioning how to expand the conversation more instead of it feeling so cut and dry.
There's also this little nugget that this makes me think of that we do a lot in improv in shows where if we get a suggestion from the audience and it's a big word or a concept that one of the players on stage doesn't fully know or know the definition of, sometimes we'll say, hey, I know what that means, but in case anybody else in the audience doesn't know what that means, could you describe that for me? Could you define that word for me, etc. So if you don't feel comfortable essentially falling on the sword and saying, I'm not bought into this, I don't feel comfortable with this, maybe saying like, I'm going to recap this in case everybody is not fully on board or comprehending what this looks like. And maybe I'll get some clarification for myself. And it's kind of this passive way of saying, I'm taking care of everybody that might not feel comfortable speaking up about this by saying it's kind of me. It could be other people as well.
Ooh, I like that. It feels very neutralizing too, if there might be some big feelings around stuff. Very cool. Who are we on? You? Back to you. Let's do a few more before we wrap up. There's a whole stack. We might have to do a second episode of this. Okay, so back to you, Jeanette. See if I can read this writing. Having conversations with the CEO where you always feel like you are wrong when they walk away.
Ooh. Yikes.
I definitely know I had experience with this.
Yeah, go for it.
Want me to jump in? I had a boss, which I always like to point out that in my career of several different corporate jobs, I very clearly had people I referred to as the boss, and I had people I referred to as leaders. And the leaders, I commonly also called them by name because even though they were in a superior role, they cared about the collaboration. And so it wasn't directly with a CEO, although I could see where this would parallel, is when you have those conversations and this goes back to some of these ones we've already talked about. If someone is so set in their way of thinking and are unwilling to even listen to something else, or if you share an idea, you are made to feel wrong. That is some hardcore but energy happening. First of all, is that they're not even listening to acknowledge a different point of view. But I remember anytime I would have a conversation with this one particular boss I had, it was always twisted to kind of put me in my place. And it did feel like it wasn't about the thing anymore. It was about who was right and wrong, which drove a further wedge in the situation. I did not stay at that job very much longer, because if you do this a few times and you try some different techniques, like some people aren't going to like the answer is that if it keeps happening, you may need to make a different choice, because our time is valuable. Your thoughts and opinions and ideas are so valuable. And if they are not being listened to and you're being energetically belittled all the time, that's lose-lose. So I wish I had a better answer. You just can't change someone's mind unless they are willing to step into their own accountability and willingness to collaborate.
Yeah, it's such an unsafe place. And everything that I would suggest has a assumption that you would feel comfortable doing it. And I don't believe that if I was in that situation, I would feel comfortable having some of these conversations with my leader / boss. So yeah, I think that a lot of times the answer might be find a better opportunity.
Yeah, this could be a whole other conversation too. I should take a couple of notes for some future episodes, because we do feel stuck a lot because we have obligations for bills and families to provide for and circumstances that often people do feel pigeonholed into staying in an unhealthy environment because they don't know what else is possible. So this might just be, I don't know, this might be a good place to wrap it up. Is there's certainly a lot of parallels. I kind of just flipped through a few more of them, and several more of these cards do talk about what do you do if the boss is the one that doesn't have leadership skills? What do you do with a leader that has a fixed mindset? How do you overcome when there is a lack of trust for leadership? Okay, so there we haven't even gotten to all of those, and yet these were all people in a room of about, what do we have, 100 and something people
Almost 200, yeah.
in real time, our real peers, our real neighbors. And so I think speaking up about these issues helps raise the bar for what we want to invite into our space. And possibly the tides can change for leaders who are a little more challenging if they have people pulling away from, you know, yeah, my wheels are turning on because it's hard. It's scary.
And you can't you can't hold other people accountable. You can't really teach people lessons. I think that like people have to learn lessons, but they're not going to be taught those lessons by somebody that they're not even in a space that they want to hear, listen to, communicate and collaborate with. And so if they're not coming to you or another one of their mentors or another one of their leaders or coworkers and saying, what am I doing wrong? There's not really much you can do in those situations.
Yeah. I remember being in some different leadership development programs as a branch manager, and I'd be side by side with peers who figured they already knew it all. Like they would just shrug it off that we were in those courses to begin with. So, they're not going to be there to make progress. And with that, teaching people a lesson, I can't even count the number of times that someone has been in an improv workshop and they'll say, oh, my husband needs to take this workshop, or my kid needs to take this workshop, or my boss needs to take this workshop. And I do agree that they should all take an improv workshop. However, their takeaway will be totally different. There is no way they will learn the lesson that, these people are wanting them to learn in the way they just heard it. And yet those are opportunities that come to our awareness of maybe things we need to work on and have some hard conversations to create the best framework for who is in our world as possible. So yeah, let's leave it on a high note of for those of you out in the listenership sphere, if you are in a stuck spot, I guess just know that there is hope. It is hard. When you're in a yucky situation or you feel like there's not progress when ideas are shared, if real action is not changing or being taken in order to change, it's probably never going to. There's organizations that are just going to do the things the way they do, and you can generally tell if it is a place where things are going to expand and evolve in a positive way, or if it's just going to be a broken record. And there's so much opportunity out there. There are 8 billion people on this planet. I think of this anytime I'm discouraged. There are so many hundreds of thousands of businesses or people who decide they have an idea they want to run with. And staying stuck where you are miserable for this one life experience is not something you have to tolerate.
Yeah. And I'll add to that something that I tell anyone that is coming to me for advice on how to handle a tough interpersonal experience at work, bad leadership, bad, team dynamics. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I try to encourage people, make it known what your struggles are. Don't just kind of throw in the towel. It's easier to fix the stuff that you're currently doing by all means. And so try that first, right? Tell them where you're at. Be honest, be authentic, say, this is what I'm struggling with. This is what I need. And you're going to see quickly if they can provide that, right? I mean, sometimes it's just the job itself isn't going to provide what you need, and you're realizing, oh, this isn't the job for me.
Yeah.
But if it's a dynamic thing, if it's a leadership thing, if you make that known and their behaviors, their patterns don't change, I mean, that's your flag. Now it's time to move on, because you've given that opportunity. You've given yourself, you can say to yourself, I did what I can do in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't do what you need to do to make this relationship work, then I'm out of here,
Yeah, preach it. And for any of you who might be newer to our listenership, that brings it really back to our simple foundational rule of improv, which is yes and. Yes is to accept and acknowledge what is. It's just being aware. And is our action item to do something with it and to sometimes make hard choices or to gather new information so that we can make the best possible next step as we learn and grow and see what possibilities might lie ahead. So whenever I get frustrated, and I would encourage anyone out there that is listening, if there's a moment where there's a frustration, verbalizing that to myself, yes, here's the thing. And I talk myself through it. This is the thing I'm experiencing, and this is how I'm feeling. Just to give an acknowledgement to bring me to present of what I can possibly do. So I won't stay in that same rut for longer than I have to. We'll learn the lesson. But that's why I think I know why, one of the reasons why Jeanette and I are so obsessed with the rules the way that we are is because they do work. Mm-hmm. The more challenging the situation, the more I lean on the rules that I know, because it is easy to say yes if we agree or we like something or we want to do the activity or whatever the thing is. And it is the game changer when we use it to intentionally activate our willingness to accept and acknowledge whatever it is for what it's really telling us, and then making some kind of an action as swiftly and productively as possible. So there's your little improv nugget. Jeanette, thanks again for joining me for another episode. It's always a blast to have you.
It's great to be here. I'm glad we could connect on these tough questions and put our improv spin on them. I always love playing with you, Megan.
Yeah. All right. And thanks to everyone out there listening. We will catch you on another episode real soon. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the I Hardly Know Her podcast. For information about leadership workshops, public speaker training, and all things kooky Megan, check out improvteamculture.com. We'll catch you next time.